Hi, and welcome to a small, medium, at large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate interviews beyond normal boundaries. I want to thank all of you listeners. We're after about 70 shows now here, and we really appreciate you hanging in there with us. We have people who are new to us today, so welcome for the new listeners, and thank you for the listeners who've been here for the last 3 years. I want to say we appreciate you subscribing. We're at over 1,200 subscribers now. I love your comments. I'm not sure what is going on, but we have 100% positive on every 70 shows. So that's really a good report to tell you all. And we keep trying to bring you different guests from all different walks of life. So let me tell you something about the guests that we're having here today. Today we have Saniel Bonder and Linda Groves Bonder. Let me tell you a little bit about each one of them separately. Saniel Bonder held a national honorary scholarship and graduated with a BA in social relations from Harvard. After devoting the first 2 decades of his adult life to completing a spiritual quest for heart realization, he has focused ever since, especially with his wife Linda's full partnership, on democratizing the embodied spiritual awakening through the Waking Down work he founded. As a prolific author, teacher, and coach, Saniel has helped high-performing teams and hundreds of individuals achieve their greatest potential. He's the author of dozens of books, and here is a few to mention: Waking Down, Healing the Spirit Matter Split, and Great Relief, Sacred Secrets Your Body, excuse me, Great Relief, 9 Sacred Secrets Your Body Wants You to Know, and the White Hot Yoga of the Heart, and many, many more. Linda Groves Bonder graduated from Ball State University with a BS in art education. She is a lifelong artist in multiple media, formerly a professional singer, songwriter, and photo stylist. She is the co-founder with Saniel of their Human Sun Institute and co-creator of their Maximize Your Joy offerings. Linda is cherished by many as a radiant embodiment of the heart, and as philosopher Ken Wilber said, a brilliant teacher in her own right. She has released 2 music CDs, I'm Here and Joy of Being. Linda and Saniel live at their Sun in Your Heart sanctuary in the countryside near Sonoma, California, with their 2 cats and the many plants and birds she keeps well tended and fed. Harry Darcy said this about their work: the spiritual teachings of Saniel Bonder and Linda Groves Bonder embody timeless wisdom, immense practicality, and a refreshing lightheartedness and joy. They are authentic healers, practitioners who help people become whole by discovering their intrinsic holiness. And they are among the most talented, multifaceted, awake people I know. So let's welcome Daniel and Linda here today. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Saniel. Hi, Linda. How are you?
We're great, Gail. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction.
Yeah,
It's
that
so
that
good
was
to be
really
here.
sweet. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
It's all true from what I'm reading. And listeners, pardon me for my errors here and there, but it seems to be as I'm getting older, I mix up words every now and then, so I hope you'll be understanding. I don't know if you've ever seen any of my podcasts, but I always start with the same question. And since there's 2 of you, it's really to both of you, so you'll have to answer separately. I want to know if there was anything in your family, your childhood, that supported or encouraged you to be on the spiritual path you're both on now, or if there was a pivotal moment in your life where, for some people it's a traumatic experience. For some people, they've had a very simple, wonderful childhood, but had parents who guided them on a spiritual path. Everyone has a different story, and I'd like to know what the 2 of yours is.
Ah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Gail.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, what a full question. I mean, there's so much to say about that. I was raised Roman Catholic in a large family, 5 brothers and sisters, and my parents in a very small little house in Muncie, Indiana. And my mother really, really wanted to raise us Catholic. My father he didn't really care. So we went to parochial school in Muncie. You know, we had the nuns and really good education through this kindergarten through sixth grade school. But I found that as I was growing older, Catholicism wasn't really singing to my heart, to use a phrase that I like to use quite often. And I talked to my mother about it. I talked to her about going to church every Sunday, you know, and I was a very good Catholic and a good girl in our family. Um, and I was just feeling some inconsistencies with some of the things that I was feeling and hearing in the religion. And it was really hard for me to even think about that, those inconsistencies for me. And so I talked to my mother about it. And long story short, she basically said, you know, if you feel like you need to move to something else, when you're old enough to make a conscious decision, then I will support you. And that's exactly what happened. So
That's
when
what,
I stopped going to church when I was about maybe 16, 17, I'd go on special occasions, obviously, and supported my church, even though I wasn't really actively participating that much. I moved from Indiana to California when I was 21. And that's where my search really, really took hold. Spirituality was different than religion, you know, as far as the way that I was raised in my family. So I was drawn to more of the different eclectic articulations of spirit and consciousness realization all around the Bay Area here. And it was intriguing, but I wasn't really clear on my direction with it. And I wasn't really schooled in East Indian traditions. I read several things. I went to different lectures. Deepak Chopra, I went to some of his lectures. I was really into him at the time when I was much younger. Several other things, but nothing really sang to my heart to where I felt like it was really fulfilling this place where I was feeling a void.
mhm.
So I met Saniel Bonder, and long story short, we became partners, married. You know, I had an awakening that is very profound, and I'm grateful to this shift in my life that happened. So this is kind of a long answer to your question, Gail.
No, it sounds like you were supported by your family in a very good and positive way. Your mother shared with you what her beliefs were, but she didn't say that this has to be your beliefs also. She said, yes, if you want to explore, she opened that door for you. And I think that's a positive thing that she did.
It was very positive. I was surprised actually because she's a very good Catholic, or was, you know, very active, and all of us would go to church, you know, and my siblings were very good Catholics, and you know, everybody went their separate directions in many ways, pretty much.
And
And
how long ago did you and Saniel, how long did you and Saniel been together? How many years ago was that when you had this wonderful awakening together in your relationship?
yeah, thank you. I met Saniel in October of 1994. And at the time, I was with another partner, and we heard about him doing sittings and meditations.
Oh, so way back then you were doing this work.
I went to sit with him, and this was during a time when I was doing all kinds of eclectic kind of spiritual seeking and feeling shifts and changes and really gleaning lots of things from different teachers. But once I experienced Saniel and listened to his teachings and how approachable and real and just deeply, deeply embodied and relational, I was very intrigued with his teachings. And he became my teacher. I dropped everything else that I was doing, and I really wanted to focus on waking down. So that was in 94. We became partners in 96, actually in 95. And then I had an awakening in 96. And from that point on, I had this need, this passion in my whole being to help others land more fully in their awakeness, in their lives. Some people, it's not even about being awake, it's about just being authentically good people in relationships to themselves and with their families and friends and coworkers. So that's what drove me so much to be a teacher
That's
with beloved.
That's a very beautiful story, and it's really wonderful to hear how two people come together, and now it's 30 years later.
Yes.
So you've been following this path together, and let's hear what Saniel has to say about how did he get on this path? And
Mm.
was his family encouraging, or did you come from a Catholic background?
No, actually, I came from a Jewish background.
Like myself.
And yeah, I didn't have encouragement for the religious or spiritual aspect. My parents, like many of their generation, very profoundly Jewish, but in a cultural sense, rather than the way I like to say it is not with any disrespect, but there wasn't any God at the center.
Mhm.
And in later years, my mother told me, well, you were always very spiritual. I don't know what exactly she meant by that, but I didn't have any conscious connection to the divine or spirit or other dimensions, anything like that in my childhood, other than when I was 3, I had an emergency tracheotomy and actually went out of my body, and have always remembered seeing my body screaming on the hospital gurney. But
Wow.
it didn't have any meaning for me.
Mhm.
Years later, you mentioned that I had gone to Harvard. I got there at the height of the anti-war movement and counterculture and all that, and became a political activist toward the end of my first year there, and got in some trouble for anti-war demonstrating.
What?
And in fact, the university, I was part of a building occupation. They confronted me, the administration, about it and said, we almost kicked you out, decided to give you another chance, but we are revoking your honorary national scholarship,
Oh.
which essentially didn't really mean much because the honorary part meant that my parents were paying my way. So, it was a bit of a disappointment, but more to the point of what you're talking about. When I came back to school the next year, the wind had gone out of my sails as an activist.
Mhm.
Not because of threats from, warnings about what might happen if I did it again, but rather without having read any books or done any lectures, I was overwhelmed with this insight that everybody on every side of all the issues was as if living in a cage or a shroud where there were inward facing mirrors everywhere you look. So we're all always mostly seeing ourselves. Every now and again, we encounter the other or the real world. And I felt very convicted of that in myself. And that led me to, I don't know if it was even a conscious verbal prayer. I don't think it was. But my being was saying, God, if you exist, you better show up because, I got no way out of this. And things started happening. I began to, you mentioned, I think at some point, either earlier or as we got started in the recording, synchronicities and coincidences and so forth. Suddenly all that was happening in my life, leading me to feel quite convinced that God actually was showing up. And that then led me, long story short, on the beginnings of a spiritual path. When I read my first book of Eastern teachings, Autobiography of a Yogi, I had a sudden awakening that literally completely blew my mind, and all sense of a local self or soul of any kind, just an immersion, an ascent into whatever that great mystery is, coming out of which I felt, well, okay, I guess this is the path I need to pursue. And for 20 plus years, I did that with the help of very powerful teachers. And at a certain point, it became necessary for me to, in effect, go on my own, though I didn't really know what that might lead to. But within a short period of time in the early 90s, I had the awakening that I had been seeking to not only experience on a temporary basis, but really in a permanent, embodied way. And my friends began indicating, you know, you're kind of contagious. I'm going through stuff just by us hanging out. And that led me to feel I had been with and seen so many of the gurus who were kind of on a pedestal. And, you know, it's an almost like an existential superiority. And my orientation was much more, let's do democracy with this. Let's make this available to everybody who can possibly access it, so that they don't have to feel they have to go that route.
Right.
If that's not their calling. And again, very long story short, that's what we've been doing for 30 plus years. Great success on an intimate scale with hundreds and hundreds of people. You know, sure enough.
And it brought a beautiful woman into your life. So
thank you for bringing that up. I was about to say, you know, by far the most wonderful relationship that came out of that has been with my beloved Linda. And, you know, early on, it was just indicative of how, for lack of a better word, classy she is. As we realized that we were very attracted to each other, I knew, especially from having been up close and personal and hearing all about the guru scandals, sex with students, and so forth. I said to her, look, you know, we were acknowledging something's cooking between us. And I said, well, this is very dangerous, because if the relationship doesn't work, you know, this could be really, in some ways, catastrophic for your spiritual process. So if it's going to happen, you have to take all the initiative. I can't do anything that later on would lead you perhaps to feel, oh my God, he took advantage of me.
And, you know, he was impeccable with that. Honestly, there was not a time where I felt Saniel really, really moving in on me in a aggressive or needy way or any of that, you know. And he continued to be my teacher, and yet we both continued to develop more of an attraction and a curiosity about each other. And he always said, you know, it has to come through your heart if you want to pursue this further. And I did.
Smart woman and an ethical teacher, because I have met the other types of teachers, because California was a potpourri of any kind of guru you want here.
Exactly.
And I was appreciative when I had my one experience with someone that we sort of, my father, and we were all involved with him, and it was sort of, you know, you realize later it's sort of cultish when you put them up on a pedestal and all this. And I was grateful for the experience, because I never went to follow anyone again after that. And when I learned, I was only 15 at the time, but I learned by 17 and a half that that's not my route, and that I'm happy to meet with teachers, but I will never put them up, that they are a guru up here and I'm somebody down here. And for many of those reasons, because I saw so much sexuality with so many of these different, and because I was of the age that they would approach at 17, I lost respect for some of them because of that. But I also realized that part of spirituality and knowledge comes a certain power that some people don't realize that they're misusing, you know. So I don't hold any negativities on any of them. I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged it and knew that that's what was going on. But that didn't mean they didn't have something to offer that might be some good information or some spiritual growth for another person.
That's really, really true. Gail, did you find that you were more of an eclectic seeker in that form as well during those times?
I was trying all kinds of different retreats, and I was doing a lot with death and dying. And I was, I felt that the different people I was finding, I was doing silent meditations, and I took classes from different meditation teachers and things like this, but no one ever, I sat for 7 days with Sogyal Rinpoche. I mean, I never took any of it as, and this is my man now, or this is
Yeah.
my person anymore. I went to all of them with like an openness of there's
Yeah.
something for everybody to offer, but that doesn't mean I have to become like I did that one time, which was like, you become like a disciple or something. I don't know. So I was very glad to learn that lesson young and to be able to experience all these other teachers as just teachers, but not that I had to be, laying down, giving them my home and my money and whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
that's.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I love what you said, because every teacher, every person who's out there who has a heart where they want to serve others in whatever form it might be, you can actually experience it a little bit and then glean the things that you need to glean from them. And then when it's not right for you to stay or listen any longer, you move on. That's
Exactly.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
always wishing the person well.
Yeah.
And thank
That's
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I had contact with quite a number of powerful teachers.
Yeah, you
Great
did.
presence, transmission, you could call it, use that word.
Mhm.
And I remain very grateful. I mean, the gifts I received have helped, no question about it, in a big way, make this possible.
Mhm.
That's
But
all,
part of
all
what,
the things of our life
right,
makes who you are today.
exactly.
Yes.
The trials, the tribulations, the joys, all of it.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying it that way. I use that a lot with the people that I work with.
Mhm.
I point out to them because sometimes the history that people have in their particular paths, there's a lot of brokenness. We call it broken zones or broken off zones, wounds in relationship. And so these individuals have to sort through it. And they demonize these places sometimes. And what I like to say in Saniel as well is every single thing that you've experienced in your entire life has actually led you to this moment now.
That's
And
right.
and they're teachers, yeah.
And I just feel I had an unconventional childhood and life and filled with different traumas and things, and I feel it's made me who I am today. So I always feel grateful, never angry or anything negative to the people or the different experiences I had. So I want to move on to my first questions. I have a lot of questions for us, so I don't know how many we'll get through, but we'll see how much energy we all have to do this.
Okay.
This question is before I go into everything about the human sun heart work. That's the bulk of what we're going to talk about, but I found one question when I was looking through your beautiful website and things, and I just wanted to know the answer to this. Before we get to your course in the heart, I wanted to know what is the miracle of what our pets and other animals do for us, mostly without even trying.
Ooh, I love that question. No one really asks us that particular question, Gail. I absolutely love it because we are so much into nature and animals, and our two cats are little sacred beings in our lives. Yeah. And the
Yes.
birds, I spend a lot of money every month on birdseed because we have numerous species of birds in this huge backyard that we have outside of town, and it's so gorgeous here. And all of these creatures really do communicate spirit. We're all interconnected, including the smallest little creature on the planet. We're all interconnected. And so if we can, as an individual, open up that field of connection and communication with other creatures, and especially our family member pets, they're family members. That's just brilliant and beautiful. And that also maximizes joy, to use a phrase that we use a lot. It maximizes joy in your life every day. There's not a day go by that we don't laugh at the behaviors of our two cats. It's so fun.
And get ridiculously silly
Yeah,
about them.
yeah,
Yeah, so the miracle is how much life and joy
yeah.
they contribute to us and how they help us stay grounded in our animal nature,
Yes.
which a lot of religion and spirituality has tended traditionally to make wrong.
Mm.
You know, that you shouldn't have desires and you shouldn't have reactions and so on. And these creatures just spontaneously live the way they live. I mean, as an example, sometimes our cats will give each other a loving lick on the head, and other times they're like, bap, 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 bap. But there's no leftover afterward.
Yeah.
They don't dwell in negativity. Not that pets can't be neurotic, that can happen.
So they
But
do live in the moment, animals.
they're in the moment, and again, they, particularly for people who are looking to embody spirituality, being in touch with nature in all kinds of ways is so helpful. And it's so simple.
Well, this is going to be a lengthy question, but I think you might be familiar with it. And I'm just going to read a long question, and then you can add however much of it you can answer. I wanted you to tell us about your highly effective breakthrough human sun heart work and how it helps people to lighten their stress, strengthen their resilience, brighten their spirits in deep, lasting ways, and clarifies their one-of-a-kind genius. I really love that you're doing that kind of work, and contributes their gifts for the betterment of humanity and all life. So it's a long, complex question, but I know you have the answer.
Yeah, well,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for framing it. And yeah, from very early on in my work, I began to feel, something's happening here that's a breakthrough. And, to go back to a little bit of the history, just very briefly, when I left to go out on my own, I had no idea that I was even going to be able to find grace again, feel spirit, never mind go through an awakening and become contagious and help all kinds of other people do similar things. So I realized, and this, by the way, ties into Linda's presence in my life, a very significant factor for me, if we can speak in code, because it tends to have all these connotations for people that we may not mean. But the divine feminine came into my life very strongly, and with an infusion of empowerments of all kinds. And between that and the transmissions and teachings that I'd gotten from mostly male teachers, there was this, in my book, The White Hot Yoga of the Heart, the subtitle is Divinely Human Self-Realization and Sacred Marriage, a breakthrough way for Westerners, quote unquote, not just people born in the West, but people who are looking to bring spirit into life. And a key to that breakthrough is that there's an opening of a dimension of our hearts that anatomically happens to be the source of the heartbeat, interestingly, but which my two primary teachers had identified as this is the ultimate seat of consciousness, of spirit, even more primary than the light we may experience above or anything, so to speak, in other locations. And that heart nature, another of the phrases that we use sometimes is, there is this one great heart that we all share equally and totally. We're not just sparks of the divine. We're holograms of the whole, every one of us. And that great heart is coming alive and awake in and as and through everybody and all of us together. And so in this process, those results come about. Your load of stress gets lightened. Your soul gets brightened as, and this is another phrase we use, which is really our essential message, if you will. the sun, S-U-N, sun in your heart, capital H, is rising. That greater nature is coming alive and awake in and as and through you. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how dastardly even your life may have been playing itself out and may continue to. You know, who are we to judge everybody's journey? We need to take our stands, but this is the nature of the human. That's why we are so seemingly much more driven than other creatures. You know, like, I mean, our cats do not spend time trying to figure out, who am I? There's something about that greater nature that is our divine identity and that of everybody else. It's most intimate to us, is coming alive and awake. And as that happens, all of those results that you talk about more or less take place of their own accord. I don't mean that there isn't will and action and effort and intention. You were talking about intentional work, but the process has a life of its own.
And that process is so amazingly, uniquely beautiful and sacred for each individual. And one of the things that gets us up every morning with passion is, how can we serve these people? How can we attract more people to come and participate, you know, mutually in waking down in mutuality, which is the three, you know, pillars of the human sun heart work, really. And that was the Saniel's founding moment back in the day, 1991, when he founded Waking Down. Well, 92. But, you know, the way that we work with people is to help them actually access the sun in your heart and to guide them and to maybe do guided meditations or inquiry processes, or simply just ask questions, listen deeply, hold them fully in our hearts, and support them in what they're going through, whether that's a horrible thing where we can help them kind of reframe what they're actually experiencing and the attitudes wrapped around some of these experiences, reframing that, kind of reconfiguring the reactions to, oh, well, I'm a bad person because I'm not practicing my discipline every day. Well, no, if your body and your mind and your heart and whole being is saying, take a break and take a walk or watch a movie if you want to, you know, trust the impulses, the natural impulses. And this is what we've been doing for many, many years. And with that, holding, understanding, deep listening on all levels, not just with our ears, people tend to drop into, wow, there's more confidence I'm feeling about myself. I'm feeling like, yeah, I'm here more fully. And that's the goal. I mean, if there's even a goal, just, you know, lighten, brighten your life, feel like you're more integrated, feel like you're more in relationship with others and your pets and nature and on and on. So I can't tell you, Gail, how fortunate I feel to be able to serve in the ways that I do with my beloved Saniel. I mean, it's a blessing, and I do gratitude every day for being able to do this work.
Well, just the fact that you're teaching people that you don't have to sit in lotus position in a temple somewhere in order to reach meditation. And if you don't do that, then you're not really going to the right place. Allowing them to be who they are and do it on their path and their way, that relieves a lot of stress for the people who don't feel like drawn to doing it that way, or don't feel that that's their method. But then there's a part of them saying, well, then that means I'm really not spiritual, or I'm not this, or I'm not that.
Yes.
So you're relieving them of those things so that they can be in the place that they would like to go to.
That's exactly right. We have a phrase, or two words, green lighting, you know, green lighting all of these places in ourselves. In ourselves, we green light, you know, the impulses, the thoughts, the possible disciplines that we may or may not want to plug into. And then others also in that support. And that's where we come in as coaches, you know, and teachers.
I was
Yeah,
with one of your students, he was a medium.
yes,
He wrote a beautiful review. I don't have it in front of me, but in essence, what I was getting from it was that I don't think he was comfortable or allowing himself the honoring of himself being a medium until he actually experienced your teachings, and it allowed himself then to be more in touch with the work that he needed to do. And I think he felt supported. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's what I got in his little blurb.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
um,
on our website.
thank you.
And yeah, Richard is a wonderful man and a tremendous medium.
He is, we have worked with him.
But,
Richard Scholler.
yeah, it wasn't so much that meeting us helped him actually own his mediumship. He was really already in that, but
Mhm.
it helped him more, as he said in that statement, that testimonial. It helped him plug into the divine I am and start to live that, not merely
Yes.
think it's true, but feel it even cellularly.
Yes.
And that's one of the great gifts of this process. And I like to say, talk about an undeservable grace to be able to somehow be able to help people come to that. Boy, are we ever fortunate and blessed.
And we want more people.
Well, I think I think if people go to your website, which we'll have on, and we'll talk about at the end, but it'll also be in our description. I notice you offer also like a half-hour consultation sort of experience, so that, you're saying that you don't have to spend any money, you can just experience this with us for a half hour and decide from that whether you would like to go further. And
Yeah.
I thought that's a very wonderful, gracious thing that you're doing, because you're offering the time. So someone who might think, oh, well, I don't have the money right now, or I don't this or that, you took that all away from them. They have no reason to not say, you should try this half hour.
That's right. And you know what happens quite often, Gail,
Yes.
is we call them discovery sessions, and we'll say a half hour, but then, we just connect with people so deeply that we go on and on and on. So sometimes it goes longer if people want that, and if we are connecting on that level where we need a little more time. But thank you for mentioning that.
Well, I'm planning on signing up, so just be prepared.
Yay.
We're ready.
Oh my
Can't,
goodness.
can't
Yeah.
wait.
Yes.
Can't wait. And that gets to you actually are a good example of the kind of people we feel very strongly called at this stage of our lives and work to serve. People who either already are change makers, world changers,
Yes.
which you clearly are.
Well, thank you.
Well, truly, just by being who
Yes.
you are and doing what you do, you're making a great contribution.
It is true.
And and even those who don't know what their calling or purpose is yet, who feel there's a genius in them, but they haven't accessed it. Those are the people who we particularly want to be of help to, so that this can ripple out.
Yes.
In
In our long-term vision, we talk about that a lot. We want individuals not to just come and have quote unquote a spiritual awakening. That can happen, definitely. But we want individuals on all walks of life who are feeling like there is something that's passionately pulling them forward, but they can't quite reach it or access some of the ways where they could maybe do some other things or feel into or relax into themselves more. And these people are also change makers, and they start to unfold and embody and have this confidence of being that helps them move in the world and be change makers.
part of, go
The
ahead.
image of us all being connected, and
Yeah.
each one helping the other as we go along.
Yes.
Very beautiful vision.
Thank you.
And
Exactly.
as Thich Nhat Hanh, a phrase or term he coined, we're not just interconnected, we're interbeing.
Mhm.
Our most primal identity is one and the same in everybody, mysteriously. And somehow getting in touch with that helps us individuate and crystallize into our uniqueness even more.
Yes.
It's
So
beautiful.
I'm going to move on to another question, but it has to do with the heart and joy.
Mhm.
So, well, I'm going to ask these, I'll say these two questions together and then you can see how we want to answer it.
Mm.
But why is the heart your primary name for the ultimate reality? If you could tell us what is the 3 proven keys of heart activation to help people strengthen and realize both their unity with that universal nature we all share and their personal multidimensional sensitivities and capacities. And then from that, I want to move on to maximize your joy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I've got all that straight. What was the start of the first one you get?
It was about the heart, the primary name for the ultimate reality, but mostly is what is the 3 proven keys of heart activation?
So
Yeah,
yes,
thank
thank you.
you.
And that goes to, in some ways, what we see as the uniqueness of our work and contribution. Not that we wouldn't love to find out that there are zillions of other people doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Much the better for humanity and all life.
Indeed.
The reason we talk of the heart that way, and this came from teachings that I had received in my time of my quest, if you will, is that this discovery, not just intellectually, but cellularly, whole bodily, that the seat of the divine nature is truly in our hearts. We say that, oh, God is in your heart.
Mhm.
That's literally pumping the blood and giving us our awareness, being our awareness. And so to call, if we talk about truth or God or reality, kind of back to the X-Files, there's a lot of an assumption that it's out there somewhere. But this is God right here. There's a beautiful statement from the Indian scriptures, the Upanishads. It's not like we came up with this stuff, by the way, that part of it. Oh my gosh, am I going to be able to even remember? There is a light that shines beyond all things on earth, beyond us all, beyond the heaven, even the very highest heavens. This is the light that shines in our heart.
Mhm.
And so it's about finding our divine humanity right here in a world that is not just some kind of subplace that's not as great as the really high, beautiful heavens, but that is absolutely divine itself. And that doesn't then make us oblivious to all the things in ourselves and in our world that we really need to attend to changing, to getting more in alignment with that deeper truth. So we live that, and what's come through for us is a recognition that, yeah, there are these 3, I remember when I was working on this, I'm thinking, okay, what essences can we boil down here that really make the difference in our world? And so we call them the 3 keys to capital H heart activation. A stimulation of that greater nature, come alive and awake in and as and through each one, not just the high holy ones, if you will. And the first of those keys is what we call heart transmission.
Mhm.
And transmission is an odd word. So many of the words just don't do justice. You've got to then explain them and give parallels and so forth. But it's the best one we can come up with as a singular term. It's not so much an energy or a presence that you can feel, although some people do. But then those who don't wonder if there's something wrong with them, and we say absolutely not. It's more, its essence is, it's a kind of a signal. By us just living this and 24/7, it takes no effort whatsoever. It's not, when this comes alive and awake, it's just on. It's like your switch is flipped on and it stays that way. And what that signal does is talk about this phrase, green lighting. At a deeper level, not just green lighting your feelings and your desires and your traumas and whatever you need to be okay with, so to speak, but it's green lighting that deeper nature to come alive and awake that much more fully in and as and through you. And so it's very much, like I said, a signal, a subjective prompt somehow that brings that, that part of one's being suddenly says, oh, it's okay for me to be here. And so many people are feeling like, it's not okay for me to be here, especially that very tender, shy, and vulnerable divinity within us. So there's heart transmission. Second is heart exploration. And what that means is in the process of working with people, we help them explore their own nature and their own world. And with that, there's courses we offer and books that we've written and Linda's music and so forth. All of that conveys this transmission, and it helps them make their own exploration. And you touched on this earlier. It's not about, well, here's the program. First, you've got to do course A, and then after that, you can do course B. Then you get this initiation. No. It's like, who are you? You need to find your own way. I mean, the first person who I helped awaken this way, she was a dancer. She took time off from teaching dance at a local university and literally for a week danced her way into her awakening.
Wow.
That was a message to me.
Yeah.
Okay, man,
Yeah.
do not impose how it's supposed to be.
It's not a formula.
And finally, the third one, which we're happen to be very good at by grace, is what we call heart evocation. So like just a moment ago when I was saying to you, Gail, you are that kind of change maker. Part of what we're doing is we're seeing you and we're honoring who we're seeing, who you are and who you are becoming. Although it's not like we're having psychic insights about that. We might sometimes, but fundamentally, it's just that recognition of our true pureship in the mystery of existence.
Beautiful answer to a complex question.
Thank you.
So I want to go on now to something that's your public outreach right now.
Just
Oh,
one
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a quick question about the radiance, about the energy that you may be feeling because you're a very sensitive individual and a beautiful woman, and so that transmission, I'm sure you have your own experiences of that all along the way with everybody that you might be encountering, working with. I just wondered, I wanted to hear a little of that.
Well, I experienced my first, I had two transmissions in the 80s that I recognize now as transmission. At the time when it was happening, I didn't know what was happening.
Ah,
I was I was traveling, I was going to cooking school in Hong Kong. And after the 2-week cooking course, I decided to go with a Chinese friend to travel around mainland China.
ah,
And we went to a city, I'm not sure if this was in Guilin or which city it actually is in. I'm not good at these things, but it was the 80s. And it was a temple called the Seven Banyan Temple. And there was something about this temple that when you look at it one way structurally, it's really this many stories, but there was something about the temple that was very special. And when we went there, we were a group of 6, ladies, and you're on your tour. Back then it was very different traveling in China. There was no Coca-Cola there or any of these kind of things yet. And nobody had cell phones or anything. And when we went into the temple, the monks were all like walking around and they were all the students. And while we were there, my friend, that's the Chinese woman who spoke the language, she said, the master came out. The master never comes out of the temple. And for whatever reason, the master came out and wanted to do a blessing on me. So the master came out and he held my hands and he said something to me out of all these people that were there. And then he left. And I didn't really know much of what he said because it was all in Chinese. But I felt this deep bursting open of my heart that was so instantaneous. And I didn't know where to go to cry. because I'm with 6 little old ladies. I wasn't a little old lady at the time, but I was traveling with little old ladies that were not onto anything spiritual or any of this kind of nature. And I was very different than them, except for my Chinese cooking teacher, who knew about all these things and what was really happening. And I just went into a bathroom there in a restaurant in China and cried my heart out in some bathroom that was like a hole in the ground, not even really a toilet, because he'd opened me up so that, and I felt sort of almost like lost, because like all this stuff was all coming up at once. And, I'm supposed to be on a cooking tour, going to restaurants and looking at, kitchens and eating all this amazing food. So,
Oh,
which is kind of on the more of a hedonistic level than necessarily, more spiritual. And so I did not know what to do because I was just walking around like an open vessel or something. So
wow.
I felt incomplete, like, I don't know what to do. I must see this man again. But when you're in China, you're not allowed to deviate from your travel. You have a set plan and you have to go to that restaurant or that place or get on that bus. You can't say, I'll take another bus. You can't do that, at least not in 1984 or whatever this was.
Yeah.
And so we were going to have to leave to get back on the trip back to, Hong Kong. And I hadn't seen the master again. So I told my Chinese friend, I said, I know we have to rush to the bus for the plane. I said, but we have to go by the temple before. I have to see him one more time.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So she says to me, okay, well, we'll slip out while everybody's getting ready. We'll take a cab and we'll zip quickly to the temple. On my own, I could have never done any of that because this is a little town. There's no English being spoken here.
Oh,
So we get in the cab and we get to the temple and we see a big sign on the front of the temple door that says closed on Tuesday or whatever the day was, or closed for some special something.
mm.
So my heart just like sank in that moment. Like, I'm not going to get my heart closed over because I'm going to just be left wide open like this.
Oh,
And just as I thought that, the master came out of the side door somewhere, came out to me and said, which she translated, I didn't hear this in English, I knew you were coming. I'm here for you, but I have to go to this very important meeting. There's only one television in our whole town, and there's a government presentation of something everyone needs to hear, and I have to go to it. And so she explained how we are not allowed to stay any longer and we have to go on to the plane. So he did a blessing on me and held my hands, and everything was finished. I mean, like, he finished the project. I don't exactly explain it because I didn't understand transmission then and how so much powerful stuff could happen with somebody who I didn't even speak the same language nor had any deep conversation with. It was, 3 sentences. But the
oh,
fact that he knew to come out that I was coming there, and it was, 8 days after since I'd been there. So that taught me transmission. And then the other transmission experience, and then I really got it, was some years later, maybe 4 years later, I was at a retreat. I think it was called The Spiritual Care of the Living and Dying. And it was taught by Sogyal Rinpoche, who had written that book, the Tibetan Book of the Deads, or it was like the Western, I forget the exact title. But he was an amazing man. And when he was sitting there giving his first talk, and there was 400 people there, and it was all like nurses and people in the fields, hospice and this kind of thing. I'm sitting there in the front and I'm just going there because somebody said to me, you should go see him.
Mhm.
And he's coughing and he's got like a cold coming on. It's making it hard for him to speak. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying to myself, God, I wish I could take his cold away.
mm,
And then we leave. And after we leave, I tell my friend, how do you become a student of somebody like this? I said, I don't really want a guru, but this guy is really, really touching me in a deep way. And I would love to be sort of his student, but I don't want to be a groupie or whatever.
mm.
And I just tell this to my friend who's brought me to this. We go back the next morning, and the first thing that happens is Sogyal Rinpoche is up there. Mind you, I've still never spoken to him. And he starts first coughing, and it stops immediately, and I start coughing. As I
Oh,
finish coughing, he puts his arms out to me in front of 400 people and says, this is what I call transmission. Now you are my student. And I was like, whoa, I had never said it to him verbally, with words, right? This man got my question, got my message, gave me an answer, all without verbal communication of, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's where those two lessons taught me transmission and how powerful that is. And it doesn't have to be 60 hours of deep meditation, or it doesn't have to be what you don't know where or when it's going to happen, but that's how simply it happened.
That is, those stories, Gail, are so moving and so amazing. Thank you, thank you. And you know, what you just said at the end there speaks to what we always say, everybody is transmitting, you know, everybody transmits, you know, from where they are at any particular moment in time or whatever. That you were able to encounter these amazing two spiritual beings who had what in East Indian traditions, a siddhi, you know, for transmitting this awakened power or whatever you might want to call it. God, good for you.
Also teaches us that words were not needed.
Yes, yes.
Words were not needed, and they don't speak English. They're not thinking in their mind, okay, I'm going to tell Gail this.
Yeah, thank you.
It's invisible. Something in the invisible happens. So
Yeah.
we're at our hour, but I still have to go into joy.
Yeah.
So if we can have another few minutes, I would like to just speak
Yeah.
a little bit about maximizing your joy in your life, work, relationship, and world, which is your new public outreach. And I wanted to know, there's a good two good questions here, which are, what are the two ends of joy? And I was wondering about the three main realms of desire. I realize this is a lot to ask, but how do we tap into the foundational happiness of the heart that can't be disturbed or diminished by any events, internal or external? And I think these are part of maximizing your joy, but if it isn't, don't answer it. But I'd like to just put some time into maximizing our joy.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much.
I'll jump in with the two kinds, you know, very
Yes.
briefly, and then
Yeah.
Saniel can riff on a little bit more.
Mhm.
The two kinds basically are the kind of joy that is, the first kind is the kind of joy that we experience day to day, you know, like our kitty stories, like this joy that you felt when you connected with these amazing spiritual beings, the joy that you feel perhaps with your husband when you're having fun or whatever. These are experiential types of joy that we experience all the time. You know, they come and go, and they're experiences that feed us and fill our hearts. The next kind of joy is more of the existential, whole being joy that doesn't go away fundamentally, even through the difficult stuff, you know, and this is what we've been talking about pretty much through this hour with you, Gail. And that is helping individuals tap into not just acknowledging and honoring the everyday experiential joys that we love to have, but to experience and deeply embody the kind of foundational joy that is in all of us, in the sun and the heart, you know. So that's the two types of joy: the unshakable kind of joy, which is always there no matter what, and the experiential.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So how can we, with all the challenges, pressures, and anxieties we are dealing with every day, how do we stay happy? More than that, how can we maximize these joys?
Thank you.
So that's, yes. Thank you, by the way, for bringing this up and
Yeah.
acknowledging that this is really becoming a focus for us.
Mhm.
All through the years, one of the things that we share as people who are purveyors of this kind of thing, as Linda puts it, she's got some really classic quotes that I quote a lot. And one of them is recognizing that part of our calling is to reach and touch a lot of hungry or hurting hearts, including people for whom this gets to those three kinds of desires. And you recited some stuff about that earlier when you were reading from something. There is just the need, and I say the word just is actually wrong here because it's not lesser. but it's the need people feel to, yes, lighten their load of stress and anxiety, to brighten their sense of just what it is to be alive every day, to strengthen their resilience, to get better at managing, all the complexities and complications of an ordinary life, especially in our time with all of these challenges just compounding and compounding. So the first kind of desire is, well, one way to put it is to maximize those ordinary everyday joys that come and go, and to learn how to find the resources that really work for us personally. So the friend who I talked about who's a dancer, she gets a lot out of dancing. I mean, I can dance sometimes. I like to a little bit. It doesn't mean that much for me.
Yes.
So strengthening and maximizing the experiential joys, and to feel not just that it's okay to do that, but fully blessed and empowered and encouraged. Because again, a lot of our traditional training, religious, spiritual, psychological, whatever, tends to go in the direction of, if you want the real thing, you've got to give up all these other versions.
Oh.
So in spirituality, there's a lot of, if you want divine union or mystical awakening or samadhi or whatever, gnosis, Gnosis, the ultimate state, or in our language, the unshakable joy. If you want the unshakable joy, so many trainings say, well, you've got to give up this and give up that. And, you can't, if you have attachment and aversions and reactions, oh, that's a no-no, you can't go there.
Purification.
And yeah, so what this approach is saying is both kinds of joy are totally okay for you to maximize, and you've got to find your own way to do that. So the other desires then are, one is the desire for this deeper awakening of the unshakable joy. So it's not just an idea, yeah, it makes sense, but I don't have it. There's a real process that people go through. We call it, again, waking down in mutuality. And it's not merely joyful and blissful and all that. There's got to be a willingness and a capacity to be with the harder stuff, the shadow, the difficulties, etc. Through that kind of work, then, that kind of awakening becomes possible. And then the challenge of living that awakened life, which is not, there's no map for it, really. You have to continue finding your own way. And that then also taps into the third quality or dimension of desire. And that is, what is my genius? Do I even have a genius? What are my gifts? How do I bring them to the world? And for so many, all these teachings on purpose and calling are working on that. And when that greater heart nature comes into play, it can show you qualities of your genius that you didn't even have a suspicion were coming online.
That's really true.
Or it can enormously confirm and validate what you always knew was there, what you may have been working to bring forward already.
And strengthen
it. So maximizing joy. Part of where we went with this, we created a course around it a while back. It's an evergreen course. And part of what we realized about it in terms of how to reach and touch so many more of those hungry or hurting hearts. If you say to someone, how would you like an embodied, radical, spiritual embodiment awakening? They're going to say, huh? Well, can you tell me more? At best. But if you say to them, how would you like more joy? And how would you like to find a way to have a joy that you never lose underneath whatever life throws at you? And it's going to keep throwing stuff. That's something that a lot more people can respond to. So,
especially these days.
And for us, this is not in any way I don't even want to use a phrase, but I'll use it just to emphasize. it's not in any way a quote unquote dumbing down of these rarefied teachings. It's rather getting at where people live. And there's hardly anybody alive today who would say, oh no, I couldn't use any more joy. No, thank you, not of interest to me. And there are some people for whom not being joyful and being stern and strict and all that and fierce and warrior-like, okay, I can appreciate that. But even there, we feed one another joy and we thrive on it.
Yeah, Saniel mentioned the Maximizing Joy course, which is in our store, our web store at sanielandlinda.com. That's our website. And there's lots more offerings in not only in the store, but all through our new website that we just developed a few months ago. And we're very excited about it. And we would love for people to experience the website, perhaps sign up for our newsletters and be on our mailing list, which we would love.
You're up to my last question, so you're answering some of it. I'll ask it officially, just so you can. Where can listeners find out more about your courses? And can you also tell us about your 10-year vision? This is my last question. I promise I won't ask any more. And how you both hope your ongoing work and your legacy will help great numbers of people maximize their joy and express their gifts now, soon, and in the future. I just want our listeners to be able to have access to the things that you have to offer, and some of them will see us on YouTube, but some will maybe be listening on Spotify or Google or some other podcast. And so I always like to say the names of websites and things right now so that they could know how they can access and find out more about you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So the website, once again, is www.sanielandlinda.com. That's Saniel as in Daniel, Saniel, Linda.com. And once again, there's lots of things to really take in and learn just off of the website. We do have free offerings that we offer every other week, where we call one a heart sitting, a heart gathering, with a group of people whoever gets our newsletters and they want to join us on Zoom. It is an amazing event every other week where these individuals get to ask questions, bring in their own particular shares, maybe a question about what they're going through with us and with others. And that's one of the events. And then Saniel has what he calls the Heart of Peace meditation every other week, which is beautiful. It's an hour-long silent meditation, a little bit of, just saying hello in the beginning and saying goodbye at the end, but it's really held by Saniel and it's wonderful. So those are free offerings.
Yeah.
And then of course the courses we have for, financial offering.
Yeah.
And that's all on, that would all be on Zoom or online. People would be able to find all of these. Do you do any like retreats, or do you have any upcoming events or classes or anything that you do in person, or would most of everything be online nowadays?
It's mostly online. We may post-pandemic, we're very likely we're going to wind up doing some in-person things.
We used to
kind of in a process of transition. I just wanted to make clear, if you go to the events page on our website, you'll see listed there these two kinds of events that are free, alternating on Saturdays generally, and we have them at different times of the day, so that we've got people in Australia and in the Far East, and we also have people in Europe, so we try to make it work for people at different levels there, or different time zones. What we like about what we're doing now with Maximizing Joy is that it's really accessible to a lot of people. And we feel that by bringing the work forward in that way, and there's a free talk we give that people can plug into if they go to the homepage there, called The Two Kinds of Joy and Why It's Totally Okay for You to Maximize Both. So that gives you a little bit more of an introduction to what we've talked about a bit today. But, I just want to thank you, Gail, for posing such spot-on questions. I mean, you've really given us an opportunity to get at essences here, and we're very grateful for that.
And
Well,
what,
thank you. I want to also put a shout out to Rhonda Grant because she's the one who put us together, and she sent me, between her and Stanley Krippner, they have both been sending me such amazing guests. And I can't thank her enough. So if she happens to be listening, a hug and a kiss to you, Rhonda. I really appreciate all the wonderful people you've sent. And she
Yeah.
knows which ones are supposed to come to me. So it really works out great.
Well, thank you for that. I was going to actually mention Rhonda because we did do a podcast with her a while back, a few weeks ago, which will be posted at some point. But our time with her was amazing. So yes, Rhonda, if you're watching and listening, thank you, thank you, thank you. Looking forward to the next time. And hopefully with you too, Gail.
Yes, I love to have returning guests.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We love it. Let me just add one quick thing here, and then we would like to make a little statement, each of us, to everyone who's viewing directly.
Please.
But we talked at the beginning, I just want to bring it up again. Go to our website, you'll see right there on the homepage, watch the video on maximizing joy, or book a session with us. And because there's a lot of dimension to these teachings, there are different courses and books and topics we go into and so forth. One of the things that you can do with us in a session, that half-hour session, which we're happy to make available for free, is we can help get a sense of the logic of your being, as we like to say, what makes you tick. And we'll be able to say, well, you might try this book or that course, or, a lot of people are interested in personal coaching with us. Let's see if we have a fit. And then if we can find a way to make that work, and we always work with people, to make it work on both ends. So we've got a big win-win going.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And is there any words of wisdom that you would like to share, Linda, before we sign off here today?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to speak directly to your listeners and your beloveds, Gail, and to you, obviously, of course. But I just want to say to everyone, the sun in your heart is rising, even if it feels like your life is perhaps falling apart or you're going through difficult times. One thing I would suggest, which is how we work with people, we don't tell people what to do. We make lots of suggestions so that you can feel into what's right. The suggestion would be, when you're really hitting up against some of the hard heartaches and difficult times in your life, reach out to individuals who love you and can support you, and find the helpers and the guidance that you need so that you can really tap into that sun in your heart, because it's in every one of us. And if you're so moved to have us help you access that and help you land more fully integrated in your life and body and health and relationships, we're here for you. And I always like to say, blessings on your journey, no matter where it leads you. Blessings always. Much love.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to thank you both for joining us here today on a Small, Medium, at Large podcast. You've enlivened and enriched my day today, and I'm feeling even more positive and energetic than I was when we started. That's what I always appreciate about these podcasts. When they begin, I'm like, oh, well, I hope it's going to be okay. I worry about this. I think about that. And then when I just let it all go and I just say, well, whatever comes out is how it'll be. Everyone knows this is an authentic show. We say right from our mouth what it is, what I'm thinking. I don't have any pretenses here. So it's a joy to have you. It's so wonderful that you're doing this kind of work out there. And I am saying support this kind of work, because this is what I believe is really the most beautiful thing we can do, is to help and serve each other in whichever ways that it happens. So I want to thank you. Yes, is there one more thing you'd like to say?
I realize we didn't respond about the 10-year vision.
Oh, yes.
We won't take your time on it now unless you
It's-
want me to do it.
It's
a
on our
minute.
Go ahead,
Okay, well,
please.
just briefly, yeah, we're in the early stages of a 10-year vision, the goals of which are 1 million hearts illumined, meaning lightened and brightened.
Mm.
Not
like what
necessarily,
you might be feeling right now.
not necessarily having gone through a deep awakening, but that's
Yeah.
the second part. That
Yeah.
1,000 more people who are unshakably awakened in this kind of way. And among them, at least 100 who are dedicated to serving heart activation and others in their own ways, using their own language, maybe not even necessarily referencing us or anyone else. It's all about everybody going forward in the best ways for them. So there are all kinds of details you can find out on the vision page of our website. It's a bold plan, but it keeps us going.
I think it's a wonderful plan. And I think you're possibly capable of doing all this. You're putting out the intention, and it's like, those ripples in the pond, and that it will get further and further, and you'll reach more and more people. And what a beautiful thing. So I want to thank you both for being here with us today. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining in. Have a very wonderful week. And remember, everybody, share your stories, because when you share your stories, they heal. Have a
Yes.
great day,
Oh,
and bye.
Bye-bye now.
thank you. Much love.